On this edition of Read with Ronald, I will be reading the second book in the Lost Fleet series, Fearless. If you would like to know how I got into reading this series and why I'm reading it, be sure to check out my introduction to the Lost Fleet video. And I want to give y'all a spoiler warning to let y'all know that I'm going all through this plot, and if you don't want to be spoiled, then thank you for watching up to this point, but feel free to turn off the video here. And if you decide that after you read the book you want to come back and see if you agree with what I have to say on it, then feel free. Today is June 11th. I am reading Fearless, the second book in the Lost Fleet series, and we are off to an interesting start. The fleet, they are on their way to Sutra, and they're still reeling from the battle in the Corvus system. They get to Caliban. It's the same as last time. It's an old syndicate base on a planet with some obsolete ships, and they transmit a warning to the syndicate ships to surrender, and those ships decide to run. And so Gary, he ignores them. Some of his ships break formation to go chasing after those ships.
I'm really not surprised.
Gary notices something is off with the syndicate ships and the trajectory they're taking, and he realizes those ships are leading the following alliance ships to a minefield. He transmits an order, hey y'all, turn around, come back, y'all going to a minefield. And it takes about 3 minutes for them to get the order. They turn around, they come back. But 4 of the ships decide to keep going. And so Gary's like, okay, maybe they didn't get the order. So he transmits it 2 more times, and after like the second time, he realizes that those ships are purposely ignoring him. And so he's desperate to get them to turn around, but of course it's too late by the 3rd order. So they go into the minefield, they explode. So Gary is pissed off about this, because he's like, why would they sacrifice all of their members for nothing? He takes a walk and he comes across Victoria Ryan. Same old stuff, nothing new with her. But she also tells him that the 4 ships being destroyed is a valuable lesson to the rest of the ships in the fleet for what happens when you disobey commands. While they're talking, Dejani tells him they've located possibly 5,000 Alliance prisoner of wars at a labor camp, so they decide that they're gonna rescue them. So Gary goes to his meeting, same old usual suspect, Numos and Fariza, blaming him for the 4 ships, saying they were honorable. There's 2 rumors going around. The first is that Gary has gone soft. The second is that he is in a relationship and sleeping with Victoria Ryan. Numos accuses him of this second rumor, and Gary loses it. He tells them that if anybody has been spreading rumors, that he will relieve them of their positions, because it's rumors like that that caused those 4 ships to disobey his commands and do what they wanted to do. Some are reluctant, but they all recognize the valuable lesson of disobeying the command, so they all calm down. And then after he fills them in on the plan and they all leave, Duelo stays behind. He believes that Numos and Fariza are a threat because people who think like them will cause more situations like what just happened. But Gary tells him he can't do nothing about them without no proof, because if he relieves them of their commands without proof, everybody's going to turn on him, he's going to lose everybody's loyalty. And then Duelos encourages him to possibly get in a relationship with Ryan, and Gary's like, nah, she don't like me. And Duelos like, did she tell you she don't like you? And he's like, well, not exactly, she says she distrusts me. And so Duelos basically tells Gary, oh, it's okay to have a relationship with her because she's not under your command, she's a guest on the Alliance fleet. I hope they are not setting up a love triangle situation between Gary, Dejani, and Ryan, because last book they were very clearly starting set up for a relationship with Gary and Dejani, and now it seems like this book they're trying to do Gary and Ryan, and I'm like, don't do this. Don't do a love triangle. Especially because at the end of the chapter, Gary, he's scared that if he gets in a relationship, he's gonna lose everybody again. He don't want to go through that again. So I'm like, please don't do no love triangle. Ain't nobody got time for that mess. Number 1. Number 2, I'm starting to distrust Duelos a little bit. Like, I distrust Ryan and I distrust Duelos because, well, she's very secretive. And Gary wonders about that. He's like, she's so secretive and she got all these spies all over the place. Why her spies didn't say nothing about the rumor? So I just don't trust her based on that, because it's like she's very secretive. She's very much playing her cards right. And Duelos seems like he's getting too close and too chummy with Gary. Like, too quickly. I'm like, nah, something ain't right with you either. I don't know, maybe it's a good thing I'm not the leader of anything, because I don't be trusting none of these characters. So today is June 23rd, and the drama. They are planning to rescue the prisoners off the labor camp. Gary's got a plan already and set to go, and he notices something is off. Ryan did negotiations with civilian leaders, not military leaders, and so he's like, where are the military leaders? And he notices that the moons of the planet are like in trajectory of the fleet, and the fleet has to go near them to rescue the prisoners, right? And so he does some investigating, and he realizes that the moons are possibly rigged with explosives to blow up when they go near them. So he sends some explosives to blow them up, and he takes the fleet in another direction toward the planet. Of course, he's right. He sends the Marines down to go liberate the prisoners and check on everything, and he's worried because that's all the Marines down there and he needs them. While they're down there doing that, the military leaders, they have evacuated themselves and their families, and the civilians have also evacuated. They rescue the prisoners. Geary, he wants to find the bunker that the military leaders escaped to because he plans to take them out in retaliation for trying to blow them up. Geary transmits a message to the civilians on Sutra 4 and Sutra 5. We don't blame y'all. It's your leader's fault that this is happening, and we are showing y'all mercy, but if y'all double cross us, we are going to take all of y'all out. And these are the locations we'll be attacking, so prepare accordingly. After they do that and they rescue the prisoners, Geary, Dejani, and Ryan, they go down to greet the refugees. I'm still convinced it's going to be a love triangle between him, Ryan, and Dejani, but I think that love triangle is going to turn into a love square. As the refugees are coming on board, Dejani recognizes this one man. His name is Lieutenant Cassel Fiva. He is an old friend of Dejani's. He can't believe she's alive, and the captain, she can't believe he's alive. He tells her that Fighting Falco is also still alive, and she's like, Captain, Fighting Falco is also still alive? Oh my gosh. And so Fighting Falco comes on board, and he walks up to Geary, and by this point everybody knows who Geary is now because Dejani done spread word, and he's like, I want to see the commander of the fleet. Gary's like, that's me. And Falco's like, you, a captain? Y'all must have had some serious downsizing. I'm gonna take command of the fleet. And Gary's like, no, you're not. And Falco's like,
Miss Bennet, do you know who I am? I have not been accustomed to such language as this.
And it seems that I have the oldest date of rank here, so that means I can assume command. And Gary's like, and Falco, he's like, no, it can't be. And Gary's like, yeah, my date of rank precedes yours by about a century, so I'm staying in command. And so Falco butters up Dejani a little bit, saying, oh, you've done a good job with the ship. Ryan doesn't like him, and Falco seems not to like her. Ryan, as soon as they get in private, she tells him she does not like that man. He's dangerous. He used to have a lot of political power on the Alliance before he was captured 20 years ago, and he was politicking to have the Alliance turned into an autocratic state like the Syndicate because he believed the only way to win the war was to go autocratic, and he also believes in basically just sacrificing his men for the greater good, and all of his victories have included severe casualties amongst the Alliance. In fact, more casualties amongst the Alliance than amongst the Syndicate. He's going to try and contest your command of the fleet. Geary rightfully suspects that Falco is jealous because he can't just come in and do what he wants. Geary is planning to be careful, but he's going to give Falco the benefit of the doubt because he might have changed after 20 years in prison. And he decides he's going to take the people next to Sincere because it's very risky, but it's very unpredictable. He doesn't think the Syndicate will be able to predict it, and now the issue is convincing everybody else to follow him there. If Numos and Frieza weren't enough to deal with, now we got Captain Francisco Falco coming in, stirring up drama. That's somebody that Numos and Frieza are definitely gonna fall in behind and try to push him into commanding the fleet over Geary because he falls more in line with their ideals and what they want. I can see this being a hot mess. So we got a hot mess command-wise storyline, and we got a hot mess love square. I can already see it. I just finished chapter 3. So Geary, he's in his stateroom, trying to figure out what he's going to do, right? And Falco comes to visit him to lend his expertise. He, in his mind, thinks they should go directly to a hypernet gate, fight through the Syndicate, and take what's left of the fleet home to the Alliance. Because he assumes that by doing that, it will cause the Syndicate to get confused and run away. And Geary is like, we are not doing that because in my experience, the Syndicate will fight to the bitter end. Falco is shocked that Geary is not how Blackjack Geary is conceived to be. And Geary's like, I'm trying to get us home all in one piece. And so Falco is like, we need to put this to a vote. And Gary's like, we don't vote no more. So Falco is shocked by that because he's like, it's always been tradition to vote. Geary is like, well, we are doing things the way that we used to do things back when the Alliance had some sense. And Falco is not happy with this. And Geary realizes that Falco is well-intentioned, but Falco believes that he can only do it if he is the leader and if he is in charge. He tries the nice approach again and suggests overpowering Ryan's influence. And then once they get home, shaping the way the Alliance fights the war. And Geary is like, I feel like he already tried this approach with Ryan, so let's see if she trusts me enough to tell me herself that he already tried this. And so when Geary tells him no, they get into it. So Falco turns to leave, and Geary's like, okay, you're dismissed, basically. And Falco gets upset because it makes it clear that Geary is still in command over him. And Falco tells Geary that he plans to assume command of the ship one way or another, and that the fleet deserves a commander who is willing to fight and do what they need to do. Ryan overhears this, and she just came to say that Falco had already tried this with her first. So then Geary calls Dejani and asks her opinion on Falco and what she thinks of the whole situation and what she thinks the other captains are thinking. And she says that she respects Geary more than Falco because Geary is honest and his methods are tried and proven to work, whereas Falco seems more impulsive. And she also says that he has a lot of influence with the prisoners because he was the one keeping their morale up while they were in prison, and she feels like there will be a split in the allegiance of the captains, but it won't be a big enough split to overthrow Geary. Geary attacks the facilities on Sutra 4 and 5, and he puts himself in the shoes of the civilians watching it, and he realizes that killing civilians is not honorary as Falco believes, and Dejani agrees with him, so Geary realizes that Dejani is starting to come around to his ideals. Then he calls the conference, and at the conference he tells the captains they're going to go back the way they came to Strabo, then go to Sidoni, and then that's going to take them to Sansir, where there is a hypernet gate. And of course the same usual suspects, Numos and Fariza, oppose this plan because they're like, oh, we have a hypernet key, we could have been got home, and you don't know what you're doing. What does Falco say to this? And Geary says what Falco suggests is between me and him, and Dejani backs him up and says that Falco is undergoing medical treatments, and Duelos and Cressida back him up. Duelos says that Falco almost got him killed when he was under his command, and Cressida says that Geary has proven himself and that they should trust him, but Fariza, of course, is like, we don't need to hear from a junior officer. But Geary decides to put his foot down and says that they are going where they are going, and that's final. And Geary, he invites comparisons to Falco because he believes that his track record is better than Falco's. And so Duelos, of course, he does what he usually does. He hangs around. He thinks the Syndicate will destroy the hypernet key. Geary agrees. He wants to go to Sansir is because there's a huge Syndicate shipyard there that has all the supplies that they need, and so they can strike a significant blow against the Syndicate because the Syndicate is too busy trying to anticipate them going towards Alliance space that they won't anticipate them going back the way they came and taking the long way around, which means they'll be able to strike a significant blow with significantly less opposition. But of course the other captains are opposing to this. Duelos says if this plan works, naysayers will have no leg to stand on. I don't trust Duelos, just like I don't trust Ryan. He's aligned himself too quickly with Geary. With Dejani, it makes sense, but Duelos, it doesn't. This series is going to call for like a huge betrayal at some point to like keep us intrigued and interested, so I can see it being Duelos. She is like, how could you do this to us? How could you do this to me? You betrayed us all. And Geary's like, how did I betray you? She believes that Geary has basically manipulated her into supporting his plan to undermine Falco by going into a blaze of glory in Sansir instead of taking them home. And Geary's like, that's not what I'm doing, but she's not trying to hear it. She believes that that's what he's trying to do. Geary calls out Ryan for not trusting him after he's proven himself, and Ryan is like, obviously it seems I was right because in the long run you've proven to be exactly what I feared you would be. And she says that he didn't run any simulations to back up his theory as proof, and Geary realizes that she has more access to his stuff than he realizes, and Ryan, of course, didn't mean to reveal that, but she was angry, so she did. And Geary basically tells her, if you don't believe in what I'm trying to do, you can go test it out for yourself. And she says, I will. So today is June 24th. They're about 7 hours from reaching the jump point to go to Strabo. They've been trading refugees between the ships because, the refugees are Alliance service members to see who works better on what ship, who can bring what skills to which ship. Geary didn't know nothing about this, and he wonders why he didn't know, and he realizes it's because it was just a small detail, and everybody wants him to focus on the big picture. As Dejani comes and talks to him, come to find out her and Riva were in a relationship before he was captured.
I'm really not surprised.
She still has feelings for him, he still has feelings for her, but because she's a captain and he's still a lieutenant, a relationship between them can't work if they stay on the same ship. And so Gary, of course, he comes up with the solution to have Riva transferred to another ship so they can at least have a long distance relationship. Tells her to tell Riva the exact reason why he's being moved to another ship, because just in case something happens, he'll know how she felt about him, because that's what happened to him with his previous love. And Gary misses Ryan as like a person to talk to. It's seeming like the love square is becoming Dejani and Riva and Gary and Ryan. Gary then finds out sometime later that Falco left the ship and got transferred to the ship that is Warrior, that is run by the Captain Carestis, who was under Falco around the same time Duelos was. And Carestis is not a very strong captain. Duelos basically tells him that Falco's going to run that ship through Carestis. And so Gary gets to worrying about mutiny because they jump to Strabo. He notices like they have to go past a jump point to get to where they're going, to get to Sidoni. But he doesn't really worry about this jump point, but he should have worried about it. You know, he runs simulations and stuff like that for what's going to go down when they finally get to Saint-Cyr. And he notices how like all of the captains are like really cooperative, and he finds it weird because even the people who like doubt him are being cooperative. Once they get near that jump point that they have to pass, he notices that some of the ships come out of formation, and so he's like, what are they doing? Captain Falco has encouraged the captains who are not allied with Gary to follow him through that jump point, because that jump point takes them to a hypernet that'll get them closer to Alliance space, but it's heavily guarded by syndicates because they expect them to go that way. Gary, he's trying to stop them. They jump through the jump point, and the rest of the ships that are in alliance with Gary, they follow him to Sidoni. He prays that they are able to somehow pull out a victory with the very hard lesson of what happens when you go against your commanding officers, but he's hopeful that if they don't succeed, that they don't give up the plan either about them going to Saint-Cyr. And so he realizes because it is a now stronger force to fight against at Saint-Cyr, because he don't have the same level of firepower. So on the way to Sidoni, Gary gets the idea on how to deal with the syndicate force when they get to Saint-Cyr. So he gets this idea to like fake a rebellion at Saint-Cyr led by Captain Cressida. It's a diversion so that they can get to the hypernet, because what he plans to do is get to the hypernet and then keep the syndicate forces from accessing it. Cressida points out a flaw in his plan because she says that the syndicate's not going to buy them fleeing in rebellion. They're going to expect them to attack because that's what they're known to do. And so they work out a plan where it's like they can seem like they are focused on something else, but really they're focused on the hypernet, so it'll cause confusion amongst the syndicate, and Cressida's in charge. He is hopeful that they are able to pull it off, but he learns that the hypernets carry a lot of energy, and so if the syndicates destroy the hypernet like he suspects they're going to try to do, it'll cause a huge energy explosion that will wipe out multiple star systems, including the one that they're in, or it'll collapse in on itself and cause nothing. And Gary's like, well, why do we not know so much about these hypernets if we built them? And Cressida's like, well, because the breakthrough came before the knowledge. And so Gary's like, so we made all this and we don't know how it works. And he realizes that somebody stole the idea from the other. So either the syndicate stole it from the alliance, or the alliance stole it from the syndicates, but somebody stole the idea. So Cressida, she comes up with a theory to limit the energy output of the hypernet, and she basically theorizes that the way to lower the output is by the way the tethers that are holding the energy in come apart. She needs like priority access to the fleet's network to fully research this, and so Gary gives it to her. And then he holds a conference, and the absences of the rebel captains is very noticeable. It's kind of Lord Morale a little bit. And then what's also Lord Morale is this long jump from Sidoni to Saint-Cyr, because it's very long. It's longer than most of the people there have ever taken before, so they don't know what it's going to be like. And Gary tells them it's all right. I've done this before. It's nothing to worry about. He plans to jump from Saint-Cyr to this place called Ilion, a location he called out to the rebels right before they jumped. That's the closest location that the rebels can rejoin if they choose to rejoin. After he tells them this, Duelos talks to Gary. He tells Gary that he knows Gary is scared because he's become accustomed to how Gary hides certain parts of himself. And he tells him that he expects Falco to fail because Falco is out of practice, number one, and number two, he's not adaptable. and he's out of touch with reality. So he expects Falco to fail, and he expects that the other captains are not strong enough to take his place in leading the rebels. And so he expects that they're gonna fail, but he's hoping that they're able to meet them at Ilion. And so Cressida, she tells her findings in order to get the research on how to lower the output. She also had to research how to increase the output. So Geary, he tells this all to Ryan, and he gives her the only copy of the data, and she's like, why are you giving this to me? And he's like, you're the only person I trust this with. I don't even trust myself with it. And so they go back and forth a little bit. Ryan is still upset with him. She's trying to prove that he's deceptive and dishonest, but she's also hopeful that she's wrong. And he tells Ryan that he believes that aliens might be real, and that they are the ones who supplied both sides with the hypernets. And the reason he says this is because the hypernets are all strategically placed so that if they were all to release huge amounts of energy, it would basically take out all of humanity. And Ryan, of course, is skeptical. And then they get to Sincere, and Geary starts working out his plan. It's calm for now because they're at the edge of the system, but he knows as they get closer to where they're trying to get to, it's going to get more hectic. So he starts, taking out military bases and stuff like that and resources. And he's not very happy with like all the unnecessary deaths, but he knows that they're necessary in order to accomplish their goal. The chapter ends with the Syndicate moving near the hypernet to protect it, and he's like, why are they moving near it so early? But the Syndicate ships in the system are badly damaged. Things start going off as planned. And so Geary is nervous about the diversion team because he's nervous they might end up bailing against his orders and attack this training flotilla that is out there. This flotilla has like a lot of ships on it, so the staff on there are very new. Geary is worried that Cressida and her team are not going to be able to resist temptation of attacking this flotilla. Cressida sticks to the plan and what they're supposed to do at first, and then she defects and starts doing some stuff that Geary didn't tell her to do, and he's like, what is she doing? But it turns out what she's doing is stuff that is also very helpful to their efforts, and Geary realizes he didn't trust her, and he needs to get better at trusting his commanders to do their jobs. And so there's no response to his surrender demands, and Geary wonders why. He notices like the training flotilla is like moving to intercept Cressida's team, but it's moving too fast to actually attack them. And they're like desperately trying to hold this formation, and he notices like the badly damaged ships are around the hypernet, but they're not doing anything. They're just sitting there as if they're waiting. And so Gary's like, why are they doing this? Ryan tells him to stop thinking about what they are going to do and start looking at what they're actually doing. And when he does this, he realizes that the badly damaged ships are placed near the hypernet as bait for the Alliance, because they know that the Alliance will possibly take the bait of killing those ships and going for the hypernet. Ships that are not badly damaged, that are on the outer edge, and they are basically positioned so that when the Alliance gets close to the hypernet, they can move in and attack the hypernet and basically explode it. So Geary, realizing this is one big trap, he offers surrender to the badly damaged ships because he's like, they don't realize that they're basically going to be sacrificed for this. And Ryan tells them they might not be able to surrender because the CEO of the Syndicate has the ability to remotely control the ships and override the crews of the ships. And so with this new information, Geary starts planning like a new plan of attack to test if it's true. And then the big interception between Cressida and the flotilla happens, and Cressida maneuvers away from the interception, and she manages to take out like the 2 battleships on the planet that she was aiming for, and everything just goes well. And so Geary, he takes his focus off her, knowing that she's going to do a good job, and he wonders why nobody has ever tried destroying a hypernet before. And he asks Dejani this, and Dejani's like, it's because they need the hypernet to get to and from places. And basically by allowing a hypernet to stay up, it allows the enemy reinforcements to come through so they can attack them. And Geary realizes this war has been going on for so long because instead of fighting smart, they've just been fighting. And so he decides to split the formation of the fleet to be more effective in attacking the ships near the hypernet. And Gary's plan to attack and like guess where they might be positioned works because As suspected, they are being remotely controlled, so they can't even override and avoid the attacks that he's let off. And that upsets Johnny because she's like, dang, they could have at least been allowed to fight back because this don't even feel fair. And so they carry off that plan. Everything goes well. Gary realizes he still needs to trust his captains and not be a micromanager because there are certain points where he wants to jump in and tell them not to do something different, but he decides to trust them instead. And so their plan goes well. They have to make some minor adjustments, but everything goes well. And then the dreaded thing happens. The Syndicate start attacking the Hypernet. Today is June 25th. The battle for the Hypernet was a hot mess. They're too late to stop the damage done to the Hypernet because it's going to start shutting down. So what they do is they finish taking out all the ships that are shooting at it. Ships that can get away, they move away. So only like 3 ships stay behind, which is Dauntless, Diamond, and Daring. And so what Geary does is he runs this program Cressida came up with, and it basically overrides their ships, and it starts firing at the tethers in a specific pattern that they don't really understand to take down the tethers. Everybody's sitting here watching this go on, and like the systems are being overloaded from constant firing. And the energy inside the Hypernet, it keeps shifting and changing, and it's scaring everybody. Geary feels like it's the end, and he sends a message to Dwellos, and he's like, Dwellos, if I die, you take over. You're in charge now. The Hypernet collapses in on itself. It releases like this one shockwave that like kills all the communication. But outside of communication, everybody is fine. Everybody lives. And so Geary is proud of everyone for the courage they displayed. And so he gets in this conference. It's less captains because Cressida and her team dealing with the flotilla and stuff like that. He tells all the captains that he's proud of them and that they did a great job. And then one of the captains brings to his attention a rumor that basically says, oh, Geary purposely took out the Hypernet gate. He's like, yeah, we purposely took it out. It was for to destroy everything. And the captain's like, no, what they mean is you purposely took it out because if we could get into the Hypernet, we would get home and you would have to lose your leadership and hand over leadership to the Alliance. So they're saying you took it out so you could be in charge a little bit longer. And Geary is like, that is not why I did that. I am trying to get us home, but this just was not an option to do that. And then the captain from Diamond, there's a 20-second delay between him and Dauntless. So after Geary says what he says, he starts going off and basically defends Geary, saying, I was there with him. I saw exactly what he did. He did what he had to do. He saved our lives. He protected us, and I'll stand by him through anything. I was skeptical about him before, but I know for a fact now that he has our backs, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to get us home, and I'll stand with him, and I stand on that. Geary lets them know what the game plan is, and then he goes to his room. And Ryan shows up. She says that she ran the simulations and she realizes that he did take the best course of action. And she apologizes to him for doubting him and for going off on him. And they have some talks. He tells her he missed having her around. He likes her counsel. And she's like, oh, you like my counsel? And he's like, yeah, you like hold me to task. I like having you around. And she's like, oh, you like having me around, huh? Well, Captain Geary, I like you. And he's like, Madam Co-President. She's like, not Madam Co-President, Victoria. And I'm like, oh, Victoria. She likes him, John. She does not like Blackjack Geary. She's liked him for some time. And Geary has just been so dense that he hasn't noticed. She says that she's seducing him. So she seduces him. And then they kiss. And then they sleep together. He gets a call from Carabali. She is worried because they can't really see the surface of the 5th planet because of all of the dust and water vapor in the air. We could do recon by sending down drones, but I don't know about that. And I'm not really all too keen on sending my men down there, and we don't know what we're up against. And so Geary's like, we can do the recon with the drones, and we just got to be careful. The Syndicate still has some weapons that they're firing off, but they can't really see what they're aiming at. The Alliance end up taking out the weapons that they're using. And then Geary has a small talk with Dejani, and she's grown under him. She's become less bloodthirsty, and Geary's proud of her for her growth that she displayed. They loot this city that orbits the 3rd planet, and the 3rd planet kind of has the same issue that the 4th planet has, where they can't really see the surface, but it's not as bad as the 4th planet. The Syndicate forces are hiding out amongst the citizens, and the Marines end up coming under fire. And Carabali's like, we're under fire. What do you want us to do, Captain? And Geary is like, the best we can do is give the citizens some time to evacuate, and then after a certain period of time, basically fire on whoever's left, because if they didn't leave, that's on them. They give the citizens about 15 minutes to evacuate, and then they fire, and unfortunately some citizens may have been hurt and killed in this altercation, but Gary's like, we did our best. And so then they loot the planet and they destroy what they don't take, and then Gary goes and talks to some of the syndicate troops that they have taken as hostages. So he talks to this one girl. She's got this title, but in it is the word gal, like the Jamaican word gal. So automatically when I seen that, I pictured her as black, and I'm like, oh Lord, is this one of those stories where the evil forces are black people? He's talking to her, and she's basically spouting off syndicate propaganda, trying to basically stay alive. And Gary is just trying to talk to her and trying to see what he can tell her that will get her to adopt the syndicate. But she's like, look, I got a family and I got a home that I'm trying to save and protect. I'm not going to tell you nothing. And Gary's like, okay, because he understands. He ends up basically deciding to send all of the hostages down to one of the planets and basically leave them alive, hope for the best. He's like, maybe they'll tell that we're not as bad as they think we are, maybe not, but at least we'll know that we did what we could do and we didn't violate any war crimes. And he also sleeps with Ryan again. Every time somebody calls him while he's with Ryan, he like won't show video and he'll speak like really softly. And Ryan's like, you know, they know something is up because you weren't doing that before. And Gary's like, are you serious? And Ryan's like, yes. So they probably think you're probably sleeping with somebody. And he's like, dang, they're going to think I'm sleeping with somebody on the fleet, because he can't sleep with anybody on the fleet because he's the commanding officer, but he can't sleep with Ryan because she's technically not under his command. And so Ryan's like, well, since I'm the only person you're eligible to sleep with that won't cause issue, I'm going to have to go public about our relationship. And so Gary, he's kind of cautious with this relationship because Ryan does say that she wants a relationship with him, but he's cautious about this because he's wondering, does she actually want a relationship, or is she just using him for her own purposes, maybe to do some career advancement or keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer? She's a widow. She was married, but her husband died. And she reveals all this to Gary because Gary is reluctant to accept her as a friend. Him being reluctant to accept her as a friend makes her upset. And so Ryan is going to go public about their relationship to keep the respect of the fleet without them suspecting that something is going on and spreading rumors. After he gets done interrogating Gal, he learns that the flotilla, the Furious Task Force, has been dealing with is moving inward. He and Dejani, they try to figure out how to deal with it. And Ryan's like, why don't y'all think outside the box for once instead of trying to assume what they're going to do? She suggests setting a trap for them. And then they come up with this very elaborate plan to like feign like they are doing something, like preparing to attack while also looting. But in reality, they are moving into position to best attack the ships. After some time of waiting, the bait is taken by the syndicates, so they fall for it. There's a lot more waiting. And Gary just decides to like walk around the ship. He finds out that a lot of people already suspect that him and Ryan are in a relationship. And she's like two different people with him. Like when she's in his room with him in private, she's Victoria. But in public, she's Madam Co-President Ryan. And so he's like, he's still kind of being wary of her because he's like, okay, how does she really feel? Like, what is she really like? Is she just using me or is she actually interested? The plan goes well. There are like a few like small things that go wrong, but for the most part, they're able to take out the flotilla. And Tajani says that the syndicates, they're going to fight to the death. They're not going to give up no matter how bad the odds are. And she says it's very brave of them, which surprises Gary because he's like, if she starts seeing them as humans, it's going to be very much harder for her to carry on like how she's been carrying on. Commander Cressida gets promoted to Captain Cressida, so Frieza can finally stop looking down on her, calling her a junior officer who they don't have to listen to. And Cressida tells him that the ships, like in Hypernet, when they're in them in transit, if they're destroyed, they'll either probably be destroyed along with the Hypernet, or they'll just fall out into normal space, wherever they are. So they could fall outside of a star system, and it take them a very long time to get back to a star system, like years, to get to the closest star system. And so then they get to Ilion. They're going to wait for the rebel ships, for any survivors, and they're going to fight off any syndicates who come from that jump point. It's going to take probably about 4 days for this all to take place. So they're going to wait at least 4 days. And he holds a conference, and he tells them the plan, and tells them after they do this, they're going to Tavica, and then they're going to Balder, which made me laugh a little bit. And that makes everybody happy because that's closer to Alliance space. He has a talk with Dwellos. Dwellos tells him to be careful with Ryan because she's a very strong and opinionated woman. And if she is scorned, it's probably going to be very bad for him. He does not mind that they're in a relationship because there's nothing wrong with it. There's no rules against it, just as long as they continue to carry on being professional like they have been doing. Ryan meets him at his stateroom and she shows him this map. And it's a map of Syndicate space that they got from one of the Syndicate bases that they looted. And it's old intelligence, but it's the best that they have. A lot of the star systems that had their people withdrawn from them create like a border in Syndicate space on the other side where nothing should be. And then she shows him in conjunction a map of the hibernets. And the hibernets are like placed strategically like defensive weapons. So like if they, for example, need to destroy all the hibernets, it would be great defense for whatever's on the other side of this border that's not supposed to be over there. And so it's like more evidence that there might be aliens, but because they can't confirm nothing, and because it would be super classified if there were, they can't confirm nothing. This could potentially be like a whole new level to the war of just traveling to hibernets and destroying them and taking out star systems and stuff like that. Like this could be a very dangerous weapon in the wrong hands. And so then they get to start knowing each other. Ryan has a brother, a sister, nieces, nephews, parents. She has all these family members at home. And she tells Gary, like, she hasn't been telling him this stuff about herself because she doesn't want him to, like, have to think about people he's lost. Gary, of course, has lost his nephew, Michael, in the first book. He's lost all his friends and family from the Century's Sleep. But he does have a grandniece. And he has this old flame that he keeps referring to. And Ryan is like, oh, well, you should tell me about her someday. And basically, Gary never got the chance to marry his old flame because she died in a ship accident right before the big incident with him. He never got the chance to reunite with her, make up with her, get right with her, stuff like that. She likes Gary, but she does not love him. She's still very much in love with her husband who died, but she likes Gary, but she says that her heart belongs to her husband, her soul belongs to the Alliance, and so what's left is Gary's, and that's basically her mind. Gary is still like kind of skeptical of what their relationship is. He's still skeptical of her motives, and they're just trying to figure it out. And we get a little update on Dejani and Reva. Dejani and Reva, they've been talking. Things are going well. They're still getting along great, but he has PTSD from his time in prison camp. At the prison camp, they got this outdated list of like prisoners, and they didn't know if people on that list are like dead or alive. They didn't know until they got that list. And so they're just going through it, trying to figure out who's dead, who's alive, because the Syndicate stopped releasing lists of the prisoners they had. And so the Alliance stopped releasing lists of their prisoners in retaliation. It's just been a big hot mess. The Syndicate, they showed up. They do the battle because Gary's preparations and because of the material they looted at Sincere. Everything goes well for the most part. They do lose one ship. Terrible is lost, not because it got shot down, but because it was too close to the explosion of one Syndicate ship, and the explosion knocked it into another Syndicate ship. So it exploded when it got knocked into that second Syndicate ship. So that's why they lost Terrible. Numos, Fariza, and Carestis were useless in the battle.
I'm really not surprised.
They were relieved of command. Then we get in this conference. In this conference, Falco, Carestis, Numos, and Fariza they're not on trial, but they're just basically there to have it explained to them why they're under arrest. Carestis is scared. He doesn't really say anything. It's pretty obvious that he just kind of let Falco run his ship through him. So that's the only thing he's really guilty of. Numos and Fariza not accepting responsibility for their actions. They're claiming that they followed the orders of a superior officer who told them they were making a secret diversion to help the Alliance.
Did you graduate from high school? I really want to know because you sound as stupid as you look right now. Go ahead, honey.
And Falco, he was not able to withstand the mental strain, and he basically lost his mind. Like, he is unaware of where he's at. He's unaware of what's taking place. His mind has reverted to the past. He does not understand anything of what's going on. Falco is taken out of the meeting. Frieza and Numos, they are demanding to be set free because they claim they didn't do nothing wrong. And Geary gets super pissed off at them, and at one point, he's like, I should have y'all shot. And he's very tempted to just have them shot down by firing squad because it would be justified for him to do it, but he decides not to because that's a Blackjack Geary decision, not a John Geary decision, and he's trying his hardest not to let Blackjack Geary come out. They're stripped of their command and they're under arrest. After the conference, he talks to Dwellos. Dwellos tells him he did a good job. Geary decides to grant the other ships who were also involved second chances because they're more remorseful and they're traumatized by what happened. Well, Triumph was destroyed because it was basically like trying to hold off the enemy while the bigger ships that should have been in that place, which were Numos, Frieza, and Falco, they all ran. Triumph, Invincible, and another ship, they hung back, give everybody else a chance to escape. And so Triumph was destroyed. The captain of Invincible, he was killed, and so another captain is in his place, and the other commander, they are like citations, but they get second chances because they're remorseful and because of the actions they displayed when they realized they were wrong, and they kept fighting to help out. Geary is just walking the ship, you know, talking to people, you know, encouraging, uplifting people, and he comes across Ryan and Dejani arguing. No! Neither one of them will say why they're arguing, so he tries to ask Ryan. She's like, I ain't telling you. He tries to talk to Dejani. Dejani's like, I can't tell you nothing, I'm sorry. And so he's like, well, can y'all work together? And Dejani's like, yeah, we can work together. But something is clearly up between them two. Ryan, she comes and talks to him. They're both being cautious with each other because Ryan's like, you know, Blackjack almost came out today, so you know, I got my eye on you. And Geary's like, is Victoria only interested in me because she's interested in me, or is she interested in me for what she can gain? And will she stick a knife in my back when she gets her opportunity? And so they're both being wary of each other and their intentions in their relationship. And the book ends with Ryan saying, I am convinced the fleet will make it back to the Alliance, but let's see if John Geary makes it back. And so we can take that in several ways, like her possibly intending to kill him, or her saying that Blackjack Geary is possibly going to be who returns the Alliance because the temptation is going to get too strong for him to shake off. It was an interesting ending. I finished reading Fearless. I gave it a 4.5. It lost half a star because the story was building up to this destroying the hypernet, and that happened like in chapter 7. So we had 3 more chapters left, and I was like, okay, so what left is there? It's kind of like, okay, now we gotta fight the syndicates in Sincere, and then now we gotta go to Ilion and fight this battle. Honestly, I would have left Ilion to open the next book so it can give like a hook for like what's coming in the next book, because now I'm like, okay, we done resolved all of this. What am I looking forward to in the next book other than y'all going to the next star system to get home? I get why the book ended the way it did, because we had to establish that Blackjack Geary could actually potentially be a threat to Geary when he finally has a situation where he can use that power. But personally, I would have used that in the next book. Thank you for tuning into this video. If you liked it, give it a like, a comment, and be sure to subscribe to my channel. If you really like me, feel free to go buy my books, okay? Because I do write books too, I don't just read them. Pretty sure you can tell by the way I tell these stories that I know what makes a good book and doesn't make a good book, in my opinion. But thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.